Welcome to Between the Sheets, the non-judgmental podcast where we're going to cover various sexual health and wellness topics. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Zwanitzer. I'm a urology and sexual health nurse practitioner, and I love helping my patients and listeners discover and develop their most satisfying sexual experiences. Between the Sheets is here to normalize the conversations about sexual health and cover everything from basic anatomy to the most taboo topics and everything in between. Real talk, real pleasure, one episode at a time. So come on, let's get between the sheets. This episode is sponsored by Boston Scientific and its educational website on erectile dysfunction, edcure.com. One study estimated that more than 50% of men over the age of 40 have some degree of erectile dysfunction, which can be frustrating and confusing. Go to edcure.com to find information on erectile dysfunction and treatment options, including long-term treatment options offered by Boston Scientific. Boston Scientific does not endorse any statements or opinions expressed during this episode. Hey, welcome back to Between the Sheets. We're going to have some fun today. We have guest Kristin Birdwell here today. She's going to share experiences from her own life. And we're going to talk about all things sex, drugs, and soul, which is the title of her book. She is an author. She's also a podcast host, which we love. And I'm just so excited to have you here. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you for the invite. I'm like, I love when I get to be on this side.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's different when you're guesting versus hosting.
Yeah. I'm like, all right, lead me where you want to go.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So tell us kind of a brief overview of like what got you on this journey, where are you at with things, and kind of like why did you write your book and start your podcast?
Which journey? Like the sacred sexuality, intimacy.
Definitely, yeah.
I mean, 'cause I'm like, oh, there's been so much that's gone on. I'm like, I can answer that in so many different ways. As far as like sex, drugs, and so I always knew I was going to be a writer. I always was a writer and a lover of stories. I say like I lived in my imagination growing up, like out in the middle of a pasture, and I love that because using that skill, and now I use it fairly frequently, whether it's visualizing or writing or something like that. And so I always knew I was going to write a book. I just didn't know exactly what it would entail. And then, it got to be where I was starting to lead people through a creative writing process. And I was like, there's a bit of inauthenticity that I felt when I was like, I need to do this thing, the thing that's been on my heart for like a decade or more.
Yeah.
And so I like hired a book coach and an editor at 19. And then COVID happened. And I'd always told myself that I was like, I want the time and energy and to dedicate to the writing process. And I was like, in some ways I got that during that time. So I wrote it during COVID. My editor was fantastic. She like would ask me questions and prompted in the notes. And then that was a whole journey in and of itself. And then yeah, finished that and then like published it in 2022, I think.
Okay.
It's probably one of the greatest acts of self-love I ever embarked on. It was like holding my baby and child the first time I ever held it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the podcast was an exercise because writing and that sort of thing had always been like my default and where I felt comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like an exercise in using my voice. And I know I want to make the impact and inspire and that sort of thing. But I didn't feel as comfortable with speaking yet. And so I was like, okay, we're going to name it the same and just put in some reps and see where it goes. And it's been cool to evolve. And I have like an insatiable curiosity. So I love hearing people's stories and I love connecting with people and see it as a way of like sharing and amplifying other people's journeys and messages and healing and like all those ripple effects that go into the world.
Yeah, that's amazing. So where did sex, drugs, and soul come from? Is that your own life story and experiences?
Well, yeah, it's a memoir. So originally it wasn't titled that. It was The Scenic Route Home because that's what it felt like to get home to myself. I mean, you could say I was always sexually curious, combine that with a lot of initiations and wounds. And so I felt like it was always baked in there. Rebel, like I grew up in the Bible Belt. So the whole tell me I can't do something that's only going to make me want to do it a little bit more. And so it was like this, I loved Hunter S. Thompson growing up. He was one of my like writing influences. So I was like, if I need to tell a good story, do I need to go experience and experiment with all these different things? And it's shifted over the years. At first, it was
Yeah.
like, I think, more of numbing or looking for acceptance, love, and validation and all those external sources. And now it's like I'll still do like a drug per se, but it's more of like the psychedelic or heart opener, or I did a guided ketamine series last
Mm,
year, really transformative. But yeah, and then tapping into the soul part. Yeah, I was at a titling workshop actually, and that's when they were like, "Well, tell us about this book. The Scenic Route Home feels like what it was to write it, maybe." I was like, "Well, it's like
mm,
sex and the drugs, and then the tapping into the soul and like finding love and acceptance for myself." Like it had to start here. They're
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
"That's the title. That's what's going to make people curious." I'm just like,
Absolutely. And that journey for each of us is different. And I was raised in a Catholic household and very much in a purity culture. Just my whole community, it was very, there were two churches, and from a very small town. You were either Catholic or Lutheran. Nobody didn't go to church. I mean, everybody went to church and everybody had catechism on Wednesday nights. And Lutheran kids, I'm not sure what they called it, but they had their Bible study on Wednesday nights as well. Like, we all experience the same thing. So it wasn't just the fact that my household raised me that way, but my entire community did. And
mm-hmm,
so it was this, we don't talk about those things, even though we know you're doing them. And you kind of have to sneak around and you're answering your own questions because nobody's having the conversations and talking to you about them. And I think it's really a problem. We really need to have these conversations and these open lines of communication starting at some pretty young ages to
mm-hmm.
prevent a lot of this trying to find our ways through the wrong avenues. Not that experimenting with sex and drugs is wrong, but like you said, when you're doing it for the numbing reasons or the escape reality reasons, then it can be a problem and it can be scary.
Yeah, and like that, there could have probably been a lot of danger avoided. Also,
Yeah.
yeah, and I resonate with that too. Like the church that I went to, like there was like a cool church, where the cool
Mhm.
kids went. I
Yeah.
mean, for a town of like 2,000 people, I mean, we had probably 6 to 9 churches.
Wow.
It is important to talk to, little ones, especially like with everything available at our fingertips.
Mhm.
I mean, used to it, what, be like a scrambled Skinamax or a
Right.
magazine or, maybe someone on the bus tells you about something or,
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
like, would you want a child to find out from someone then, or do you want to be the direct source and influence and, be able to
Right.
have like a conscious conversation about it?
Right, and teach correctly, right? Teach the biology, teach the not necessarily do's and don'ts, but the what ifs, if you do get pregnant, if you do this, if you get an STI, if you do, there are, I don't want to say consequences to what we do because children are lovely and whatever, but there are circumstances that can happen based on our behavior. And
Mm-hmm.
if we're not having those conversations, then you don't even sometimes realize that certain things could happen
Mm-hmm.
and the emotional damage that some of us did to ourselves by experimenting and being in unhealthy situations or relationships, it's very damaging. And I really hope that we can do a better job for the upcoming generations by having conversations like this, my podcast, your podcast, et cetera, because I think it makes a big difference.
I do too. And I think that, it would have ripple effects in later on into like adulthood. They'd be able to have conversations with people like their potential partners or, be able to have
Hmm.
a conversation and alleviate shame too.
Yeah.
Instead of like sweeping it under the rug or we're not going to talk about it type of thing. One of my mentors has a great book called Sacred Sex Ed, and it's a good go to like start. And she even talks about some people have reached out to her and told her like, hey, I'm starting to introduce some of these elements to my kids
Mhm.
because so I'm like, oh, cool. It's good to hear that like some of that is starting to happen. I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And my kids, excuse me, are young adults now. My son is a senior in high school, my daughter's in college, and they will ask me questions. Their friends will come over and be like, Miss Steph, like, what's going on? What about this? I had a girl not too long ago over here that said, I have this birth control that goes in my arm and I've had it for 9 months and I haven't had a period the whole time. And now I'm spotting, like, am I okay? And I love that they know that they can talk to me about that stuff
Mhm.
because there isn't always a safe person. And they know that I'm a urologist and I do this stuff for a living and I'm a quality person to ask. But they also know I'm open and I'm not judging them. And this is a safe place. And so I love that. And I want more people to have that because you're right. All of it is at our fingertips, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Mhm.
And, I see in my office, I have guys in their 20s and 30s coming in with erectile dysfunction now, but it's
Ah,
all psychological because they masturbate and they watch porn and they get these ideas of what sex should be or what they think it should be. And then they go have sex with a partner and they can't climax because it's not that way.
mhm.
It's fascinating.
Great. So, yeah, that's and so young to be having
Mhm.
probably living in their head too a lot.
Oh,
So it's
yeah.
like practice maybe some like little embodiment practices that, yeah,
Yeah.
made, an idealized version or something. Yeah. I've heard a lot about that. Or I've
Yeah.
had people reach out at a younger age and they're like wanting like stuff, info or advice or guidance all around ED. And I'm like, wow, that is
Yeah.
surprising that it is like younger.
Yeah, and I think the other part of it is performance anxiety in the sense of, when I was in high school, there weren't really AP classes. Maybe they were just starting to be a thing. You did basic stuff. You got, into college with your ACT or SAT scores. Now it's like your GPA and your SAT score isn't even good enough. You've got to be in all these clubs. You got to be in sports. You got to be so from such a young age, these kids are getting so much pressure on them, and that goes into other avenues of their life. And I think it's really affecting their sexuality as well.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the performance anxiety. And then if they're watching a lot of porn or something, I'm like, that's real performative, so not
Right.
authentic. So it's like a little skewed
Yes.
view of, and then carrying that into their relationships. Yeah. Whew.
Yeah, it's a
I'm glad
lot.
that I didn't grow up in the era of like social media and phones at my fingertips
Right.
and
Right.
just
Yes.
scrambled. Like,
Absolutely.
a blessing there too.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit more about your sexual journey and like how you kind
Yeah.
of worked through that.
Yeah. So I had, some what I call initiations at an earlier age. And then really, I feel like I had a sexual awakening. I was having sex with someone and like we had synced breathing and like eye contact. And this was pre any like tantric or study or any
Yeah.
of that. Uh, and it just felt like we were reading one another's minds and it was just like so alive and present and beautiful that I asked him a couple of days, maybe a week or so after that. I was like, did you like study tantra or anything? And he's like, no. And I was like, oh. I was like, "So it was me?" Do you I was, like, trying to wrap my
Yeah.
head around it, and I'd read this book called, like, Sex Shamans, and it kinda opens with, like, a similar story of, like, a sexual awakening, and that kind of, like, spurred my curiosity, and so once I published the book, I looked into different trainings, and I went to an ISTA, which is, like, the International School of Temple Arts, and, like, just started, like, following my curiosities and, going to different trainings and that sort of thing. I felt like I had had a lot of mental understandings through the process of writing the book and that sort of thing,
Mhm.
but getting certain tools at some of those different trainings, whether it was ISTA, and I've been in this one called Pleasure Priestess for the last couple of years now, has really given the embodiment piece to it or like the somatic coupling for the understandings that I had. Cause I was like, okay, I have a concept of like forgiveness, but
Mhm.
is there still like any stored anger that I need to like hit a pillow or something or scream into a pillow or
Yeah.
have like a aspecting type of thing with like my stepfather or with, someone that, was part of that I'm not available to have that conversation with person to person, but I can like visualize that they're sitting on a pillow in front of
Mhm.
me and like go back and forth with this dialogue. And it was very healing. And so it also felt like a homecoming. I would say there was always like this body dysmorphia or,
Mm.
in that sort of thing too. And I remember being at yoga teacher training and like my fingertips landing softly on my skin, like with grace. And I was like, when was the last time like I didn't touch myself or talk to myself that wasn't in a judgmental way, that was in a
Mm.
compassionate way? And I was like, I don't know if I had ever done it that, broke
Yeah.
down crying.
Yeah.
And then just so like started weaving in like the sensual practices into my life, which helps me be more present and live a more pleasure based or pleasure filled life. And that can look like having a piece of dark chocolate or having like a juicy, just like I love touch,
Yeah.
experimenting with different kinds. So I'm like touching touching my arms as I do it. But yeah, it's just been, I was like, this is it. And it also felt like a homecoming because for so long I felt like my spiritual life and my like human desires like in two separate categories. I was like, how do I integrate my sexuality with my spirituality?
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, you mean embracing my humanness and it doesn't negate that. And I can have a good sipping tequila and like have my human desires. And so it just really felt that it embraced the totality of who I am. And that includes my
Mhm.
sexuality and wasn't like me just trying to meditate or transcend out of the human experience.
Yeah.
Cause I was like, oh, enlightenment. So I just like, yeah, different trainings and following, and it's still unfolding and like it
Yeah.
changes. I think that's a big piece too, is like permission to evolve and shift. Cause I've explored like, I'm like, I have a lot of love in my heart to give. Am I poly? So explored open relating. And then I'm like, well, I'm like, now I'm kind of feeling a craving for like monogamish because I feel like I had to discover who I was and then
Yeah.
find out who she likes and what
Yeah.
she likes after
Yeah.
years of like people pleasing and stuff. So it's been a journey, so it's hard to, like, pinpoint one thing when it's, like, so much.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree. I got married very young to my high school sweetheart, and we had kids together, and we ended up divorced. And starting over as an adult to date and to figure out who you are, what you like, who do you want to spend your time with? What characteristics are there? And learning that about yourself too. What characteristics do I like about myself? Where areas do I want to improve on? Like you said, it's just such an embodiment of yourself and such a growth experience. And I went through very similar things. Do I like monogamy? Do I not? Uh, am I fully heterosexual? Am I not? Like, I questioned myself on all of these things. I dated people with different backgrounds, different socioeconomic statuses than me, all these different things that I hadn't been exposed to. For one, because I came from a very small town. And from two, because I got married so young and didn't have the
Mhm.
chance to explore and experiment. And I did. And it was lovely. And I have some regrets and I have some, oh God, moments. And I have some really fabulous memories too. And all of those things, the good, the bad, and the ugly, built me to being who I am today. And I mean, I love who I am today. I love what I have found in life. I love the partner I'm with. I love the mother that I am to my children and all of these things, every facet of myself. But I wouldn't have gotten here had I not gone through certain events in my life and really taken that time to learn myself, to allow myself grace, to do the classes and the therapy and all of the things because it makes such a big difference. But experimenting is a huge part of that.
Mhm. Yeah, I say like that's the big value of mine is that curiosity.
Mhm.
And it gives you clarity, kinda like you said, like, okay, I know what I like or discover and
Yeah.
get to see, look at the world through different lenses or get, closer to, if like for me right now, I don't have like a primary partner. And so it's like, okay, what do I'm getting real clear on like my deal makers, my deal breakers, like the value,
Yes.
that stuff. And I'm like, that's exciting. And also just loving, kind of like you said, the self-love, like just loving the time and period that I'm in. Cause I have
Yeah.
this thing where every now and then, whether it's like work related or, relationship related, it's like at some point I'm like, you'll probably miss this phase at
Yeah.
some point later on. And so really just trying to savor it like it kind of reminds me of this saying that my mom gave me that was like, this too shall pass. And I use
Mhm.
that in a lot of like my trial moments, but I also like using it in my like joyful moments too, because it's like, okay, slow down, savor this because
Yeah.
life is impermanent and it's all
Right.
past. So I just think that, yeah, it's important to be curious and learn and get that clarity for ourselves. Even like the most heartbreaking situations, like I love my mom, like she'll say like, well, you have a little more clarity and you're one
Yeah.
person closer.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I went through a situation a few years ago where I was dating someone who, to me, it was like serendipity. We had known each other as kids, did our own thing as adults, came back together, and it was beautiful. I mean, there was just so much quality in that relationship, so much honesty and friendship and partnership. And it was beautiful until it wasn't. And literally got a text in the middle of the night that I woke up to the next morning that basically just said, "This has been great, but I'm out," kind of thing. And I've
Wow.
never heard from him again, never contacted me, never anything like that, like blocked me immediately. Um, to each their own, right? But to me, that was such a devastating thing because I got no closure. I had no idea what happened. I mean, I assumed I knew what happened because what everything else was going fine. So why would you just all of a sudden disappear? And it took me months to gain clarity on that, to stop worrying about, is he ever going to reach out again? Do I care? Do I want someone to
Mhm.
reach out to me that was so easily and cowardly about just see you later and never speaking to me again? Like, to me, that's so cowardly. If you found somebody else, if you don't want to be with me, have a freaking conversation with me. Like,
Yeah.
we are grown ass adults, you know?
Yeah.
I can handle it. But that devastated me. And to come to find out that he did find someone else. And by the time I was still working through my emotional trauma, he already had this girl pregnant. So, like, that was such an eye opening moment for me to say, like, okay, I need to make sure that I am 100% happy with me and my life and everything I have going on. And that whatever partner I choose going forward is an addition to that,
Mhm.
adds to my happiness, adds to my life, isn't my happiness or my identity. And I really have embodied that over the last several years since we ended. And it's amazing the growth. And now I can look back at that relationship and be like, well, this should have been a red flag and this should have been, and I shouldn't have tolerated that or whatever, even though at the time and at that moment, it felt so beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds those are so challenging. I'm like, the
Yeah.
ghosting or, like, the non-communication, it's like, yes, it provides clarity. It sounds like it was, like, a catalyst too to, like, do all of that or, like, wrap up that to get to that place.
Yep.
I always like to, like, "Okay, what was the gift in it?" I'm like,
Yes.
it's all working out for good even if I can't see it in this moment." Like,
Right.
that's I'm like, even if I yeah, because yeah,
Yeah.
the ghosting, I'm like,
And, you
I
know,
just
so many beautiful things came out of that. I
yeah.
had a therapist who, to this day, I still stay in contact with, and I've read some amazing books out of it. I don't know if you've ever read Glennon Doyle's Untamed.
Oh, yes.
Fabulous book. Love it. That helped me feel release and like I was allowed to go out and explore and figure out who I truly am to myself because she figured that out for herself, you
Mhm.
know? And I think there's just been so many beautiful things that have come out of that since then, and the partner I'm with currently blows that guy out of the water as far as how he treats me and everything that we have together. So, yes, absolutely, I am in a better place now. But again, I'm in a better place because I went through that and I did
Mhm.
the work and took the time to heal and to experiment and to learn and grow, which I just think is so important for our individuality. And I loved what you said earlier about taking time by yourself and how you love touch. And you just, because that's one thing that I think, especially as women, we don't do. We don't take time for ourselves. We don't please ourselves, whether that means orgasm or not. Like you said, sometimes you just want that piece of chocolate and
Mhm.
just savor it and love that. And I think that's so important.
Yeah, it's like, how can I make this next little moment of life more pleasurable or
Hmm.
romanticize life a little bit? Like, I mean, I've
Yeah.
did like this pleasure mapping session with myself where I was like, oh, I'm just gonna experiment. I'm touching my wrist over here. I'm like, I'm gonna experiment with like different parts of my body, and I'm like, oh, that's a surprising sensitive little erogenous zone that's
Yeah.
not on the typical erogenous zone list. So it's
Yes.
like, I'm like, okay, how can I find that? And I feel like it just helps like that, mind body connection and just really, yeah, just enjoying the time with myself and just
Hmm.
feels nourishing too. That's
Yeah.
another one of the questions that I like. I'm like, okay, what's going to nourish me in that moment? Sometimes it's a salad.
Mm.
Sometimes it's a steak. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's, my potatoes or like very food and sensual and all
Yeah.
that stuff. Motivate. I'm like, I tell people my food is one of my love languages.
Right. Right.
But yeah, it's so important, I think, to sit with yourselves or to look at ourselves as like kind of like a miracle to explore versus
Yeah.
like, for so long, I think I got into a loop of like a project to fix mentality.
Hmm.
And then I was like, no, I want to look at it as like a miracle to explore. And like I get to learn and discover new things about myself
Yeah.
versus like I've got to fix something type of thing.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's just been pretty profound to me too. And like embracing all of my mess and humanness. Cause I feel like the
Yeah.
more I've embraced that too, the more spiritual life has become, or the more I'm available to be present.
Yes. Yeah, it's honesty with yourself about the pros and the cons, the good and the bad. Yeah, I love myself and I'm a great person, but don't believe I don't know my own flaws and I don't work on those and I don't, but I think the more I've taken time for myself, the more I've been able to give myself grace in those moments. And I love what you said about pleasure mapping because that's huge for people that don't really understand that or haven't heard that concept before. Do you want to explain that a little bit?
Yeah, for me, it's like having like a curious lens on and like a little self-discovery, and you can do it, you can experiment. It's like you can experiment with different types of touch, with
Mhm.
different temperatures. You could do like a warm oil, you could do a flower, you could do an ice cube, you could do a
Mhm.
feather, you could do your hands. But just,
Yeah.
like, kind of exploring different areas on your body. You could touch your genitals, you could not. You could
Mhm.
do different times in your cycle and just be like, "Okay, when I'm ovulating, I know I'm like, oh, I like this more, like, grippy touch or, like, more
Yeah.
primal,' or there's, I like this cool chain thing." I don't know. Or if I'm feeling like, kinda like in my luteal or I'm about to start, I'm like, maybe I want something a little more tender or slower. It's
Mhm.
kind of like discovering. So I look at it as a way to like find what turns me on or lights me up or feels pleasurable in my body.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think it's important to do that. And my listeners know I talk about this a lot. If you take the time to do that when you are by yourself, then when you're with a partner, you know better how to allow them to please you. And hey, I actually really like this touch. Or, like you said, especially for women with our cycles, like there are certain times where I'm like gung ho, ready to go. And there are other times where you got to spend more time warming me up. Or I want something harder, faster, firmer. I need something softer, gentler, more sensual. Like, and there really are those differences, and not only with our cycle, but through phases of life when you have little kids versus older kids versus no kids, when you're,
Good call.
in more of a romantic phase of things versus let's just hook up kind of phase. So there's different things in different ways, and taking that time with yourself to know what you like in all these different moments is really important and crucial to then when you are with a partner.
Yeah, for sure. I have like a tout. I'm like, no faking orgasms. But that's
Yes.
also because I took the time to discover like, okay, and then now I can communicate. And I feel
Yeah.
like that also helps your partner and probably helps alleviate some of like maybe the performance anxiety, especially if it's like in a newer dynamic or you're learning or discovering together. It's like, oh, if you have the roadmap,
Yes.
hop in the car with you.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I love, like, the sensual massage too, I'm
Yeah.
like I'm like, "Yes, if you give me, like, a 10 to 15-minute sensual massage, chances are,
Yeah.
if you don't just straight from my
Right.
clit, I'm
Yes.
like, that I'm gonna be nice and relaxed."
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
It's so important. And just that self-care and that self-learning, and whether you bring yourself to climax or not, whether you ever even touch your genitals or not, it's still important to allow yourself that time and to feel pleasure and just sit in that moment.
yeah. I've
Yeah.
heard and I don't know all the science behind it, but I hear that it's, like, medicinal too, like, the release of those hormones and,
Yep.
like, the oxytocin or the endorphins, and so I'm not the expert in that, but I'm like, I hear
Yeah.
that, and I feel
Yeah.
better when I do it, and then sometimes it's harder 'cau whenever it's like when it's like the thing it seems to be sometimes like the thing to go the first, but I'm like,
Yeah.
"Actually, no. I need to prioritize this," even if it's like 5, 10 minutes, like, it doesn't have to be
Right.
like a super elaborate thing. Another
Yes.
thing that I love is, like, this devotional undressing with self, because sometimes it's like, "Okay, how are we just sort of
Yeah.
taking our clothes off?" Like, it's like, no, slowing down and, like, savoring, like, you can do it with yourself or you can do it with a partner.
Mhm.
"Okay, maybe I'll play with this strap for a while," and I put on, like, a good song and
Yeah.
really feel the touch or close my eyes and like, transport myself to, like, the ancient days where the priestesses were
Yeah.
dressing or undressing or the royal or divinity or treating myself as, like, the divine being that I am. So I
Yeah.
love that, just, like, slowing down.
Yeah, it's really important and it's very sexy and it's good to do and to try different things. I mean, it's just so important to be open-minded and experiment, and if you are in a relationship, the communication factor is so big. The aftercare of, "Hey, did you like this? Did you not like this? This touch was good, but not this one," whatever. But doing it in such a loving and communicative way without judgment, just say, "Hey, next time let's try this instead," or "Keep doing that. I like that a lot." It's such a great time, and especially when you're like basking in that post-orgasm glow of your oxytocin, to have those conversations, it's beautiful and it's wonderful. And there are health benefits, like you said, they decrease migraines, they improve cardiovascular health, they improve our circadian rhythm and our hormone balances and all of these wonderful things. For men specifically, it decreases your risk of prostate cancer the more you orgasm. So, there's lots of really, really good health benefits on top of just the lovey-dovey feeling and that connection with your partner if you have one. So
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, no, I think it's important too because I feel like there's maybe post COVID too had something to do with like just a higher number of people being touch hungry or touch starved
Yeah.
and like or touching ourselves or touching one another or even like platonic touch
Mhm.
friends or something. Like, just I think that that maybe should be a little bit more normalized, like the
Yeah.
hugging or the I even know some people that will do like some groups and they'll do like consensual, like non-sexual touch, but
Mhm.
just very supportive, which I think is really cool too.
Yeah, I mean, you can order a cuddle buddy now off of these
Yeah.
apps. Like, I love that. It's great and totally non-sexual. Just come snuggle me and talk to me or take a nap with me or whatever. Like, it's a great way to get touch. It might creep me out a little bit if I don't know you. I like to know whoever's touching
Yeah,
me, but to each their own.
for sure. I know I'm like, I have a dog. He can't really be Big Spoon.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm like, I'm Big Spoon for him,
that's
but
right.
yeah.
That's right. Yeah, so
No
funny.
judgment.
So
Yeah.
when you're writing your book and doing your podcast and stuff, so we've talked about the sex stuff. Did you use the drugs and alcohol as an escape as well? Was that part of your journey as kind of
In the
figuring out
early
where you felt? Yeah.
I mean, totally in my early to mid 20s, it was like, whoo, yeah. And then later on, it kind of shifted to like, psilocybin mushrooms. And that was a transformative experience. Honestly, it was like a reset button for joy
Mm,
because I had lost my dad and I thought that I was just at a new baseline for joy. This was in
mhm,
2013, where he died in 2013. And then the mushroom experience was like 2017. But I was just like, I guess this is just like how life is going to be, like this new like baseline of kind of depression. And oof, I'm in a grief moment right now too with my grandma. So it's like, oh,
oh,
and and it just for me, grief is also like shows how much I love. But
yeah.
that experience with the mushrooms, so I was that baseline. I was like, okay, this is the new depression, whatever. And
Yeah.
so I ended up having this hero's dose where I felt like I astral
Mhm,
projected out of my body and like connected with his spirit. And I was like crying and laughing at the same time. I was like, how could I have ever thought that you abandoned me? Like you've been here this whole
mhm,
time. I felt so much unconditional love. I was like, that's what we're here. We're amplify love, be love, and express our gifts and da da da. Da. And then I came out of it like the next day and it just felt like I could see the interconnectedness of life, like a little hummingbird like went over to a little flower and just like this. And it was just like, wow. And it was like a good just reset button. And I was like, oh, I can experience like exhilarating joy post that.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
just so beautiful. And then there's a bit of a journey too with my ketamine series last year that was another like transformative journey. I had gotten to a point where I was starting to experience like some suicidal ideation thoughts. I was like, this
Mm,
is me, like red alert, like what's going on? And so I had looked into it and I found a therapist and did it all like guided. In my 20s, I would not have done anything guided per se, but totally recommend. And then, in the first session, I was like, why am I in this cornfield? I'm in a cornfield. And like the next session was like, stay for the harvest. And then another one, I was like, my younger self was dancing with my dad's younger self. And it was like me doing this work was like liberating his spirit. And I was like, you never really felt your emotions and do I have to feel it all? He's like, yeah, sorry about that, kid. And then like just later on, I came out of it and I was like, it was something about wild woman, something about wild woman. And my therapist in the integration session later on was like, do you think that it could have been the suppression of your wild woman that was
mm,
causing the anxiety and the thoughts? And I was like, I burst into tears. I was like, oh shit, yeah. Because I
yeah.
had like positioned or all my offerings at that time coming out of a breakup and positioned all my offerings to be like what I knew was like liked and palatable and more accepted by people. And then it shifted post that. But I was like, yeah, wow. She's like, yeah,
Mhm.
your neural pathway, you went to what you knew. And
Yeah.
then so we had to create this new little groove over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a different, way with those drugs
Mhm.
versus, the numbing out versus like the intentionality behind it.
Yeah.
But I am definitely like an enthusiast or a proponent of like the psilocybin mushrooms and guided ketamine series. I just like
Yeah, there's
because
so much great research coming out with it and, people truly getting healing after years of dealing with trauma, PTSD, things like that. There's amazing research coming out with it. And I think, it's especially when like you said, you find a therapist, somebody who knows what they're doing, how to do it because you do need someone there. I mean, it's a guided, monitored situation. It's not something that you should take lightly.
Mhm.
It's definitely something that you want a professional who knows what the hell they're doing
Oh,
helping
yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and I didn't realize and I had kind of, like, resisted traditional therapy for a long time. I was like, "Okay, I'm going to go these, like, more non-conventional routes," and then
Mhm.
when I did the thing through Journey Clinical, it was, they paired me up or gave me a couple different options, and I was like, "Oh, wow. She's been trained in sacred sexuality and trauma, this," and, like, we had, like, some similarities in other aspects. I was like, "I didn't realize a therapist could be grounded, woo, or spiritual." Like, I'm like
Right.
I was like, "I just didn't know one of you like you existed."
Yeah.
So and then funny enough, I was like, "Doo, doo, doo, doo." Like, the subtitle of my book was Finding Grace in the Shadow.
Mm.
Name was Grace.
Wow.
I was like, "Okay, that feels like a sign." So
Right. That's awesome. That's really cool. Yeah, and a lot of I think, you're not alone in the fact that you used drugs to escape. None of us are alone in the fact that we used sex to feel love, even if it wasn't real
Mhm.
love. I don't talk about it a lot on here, but I don't drink alcohol anymore. It was not that I was addicted per se, but I didn't like the decisions I made when I drank. And when I did drink, I drank a lot. I went out with friends, I went to bars, we had a great time, but I didn't make great decisions. I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't who I knew I needed to be and wanted to be. And so I just decided that I needed to cut that out. And it's been a great thing for me. I mean, I've traveled to Italy since and things like that. So yes, I have drank and had some wine or some tastes or whatever. Again, because I wasn't truly an addict, I can do
Mhm.
that. That's not to say everyone should or could, but for me, it was such a liberating experience to remove that. And it was almost like when you hear people talk about, like, if you can't have one of your senses, your other senses open up and peak. It was like removing that from my life allowed the rest of my life to come into focus. And,
Mhm.
that was when I realized that I really want to pursue more with sexual medicine. I have to practice general urology at work and I really like the sex med side of things. Let me try a podcast. I would never have had the energy or the motivation to do this podcast while I was still drinking because it was more important to be out and having fun with my friends and making terrible choices. So, that for me was a really great moment and journey and movement to become who I am. And I think it really allowed me to find my best self and allow myself pleasure in other ways. Whereas I thought this one thing gave me pleasure.
Mhm.
Taking that away allowed me to go into all these different areas and try a lot of different types of pleasure, which was really cool.
Yeah, I feel like it would bring a lot of things online. So, like, do I like this if I only like it under this influence? I'm
Right.
curious, like, did you have any I have, like, had a similar journey.
Mhm.
Not completely alcohol free, like, I'll have, like, a glass of wine or an
Yeah.
intentional sipping tequila, but it's not what it used to be, but I remember, like, how interesting it was with the pushback with from some people or the curiosity. I was like, "Is this a projection of your own, like,
Yep.
drinking?" Or so I was curious if
Yeah.
that shifted or cleared away or, brought clarity on the certain relationships in your
It
life by
did.
choice. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can tell you people that I thought were really good friends were just bar friends.
Mm,
And, if I didn't go to the bar, I never saw that person.
mm,
And the only time we texted was, "Hey, where are we going this week? What are we doing?" And once I removed myself from that, I can still go to a bar because alcohol doesn't bother me. It's not a thing. And for a while, I still kept going and was included. And then it was just the invitations came less and less often because I wasn't that version of me anymore. And I got the comments, "Well, are you ever going to drink again?" Well, drinking isn't that bad. Well, everybody has a different definition of what's that bad. For
mhm,
me, I needed to remove it to live my best life. I don't judge anybody else for still drinking. My partner, I'll have beers when we go out. Like, that's no big deal. It was just something that I needed to do for me. So, absolutely, I have lost friends and relationships. I have had relationships change because, we do different activities now than we used to, or we'll do the same activities, but we're not drinking while we do them anymore or something. But the more I sit with that, I'm okay with it because I love who I am right now. I love the person that I have become. And if you don't want that version of me, you want the old version of me, to me, that's a reflection of you and not me. I love growth. I love growth for myself. I love growth for my friends. So I'm okay with where I'm at. But yeah, I got a lot of flack.
Yeah, I know. I was curious. I found, like, I discovered, I was like, oh, I really like depth. I value depth. And I feel like it increased like the level of connection with other people,
Yeah.
while others, like, it shifted or distanced or evolved in some capacity. And also, yeah, it was like also kind of a cool, like, oh, okay, I can
Yeah.
shift my relationship and say no and go do fun, cool
Yeah.
things that used to, I'm like, I don't know if I would have done this without any alcohol.
Right.
Like go to a concert by myself or go to a dance, thing or,
Yeah.
have anything. And then, yeah, like this, like the connection and depth with conversations too. I'm like, okay, they'll actually remember this conversation.
Yeah.
like,
Exactly.
like,
Exactly. And then tomorrow morning, I actually get up and get shit done because I'm not hungover.
yeah. And I was like, and that's how I got to my third. I'm like, oh, these hangovers last. Then I
A
think they
long
extended.
Yes.
I'm like,
Yeah.
no.
Right. And I used to think I liked drunk sex. Guess what? Sober sex, way more fun.
Yeah, way
You know,
better.
especially when you're with someone who you can be as goofy and sloppy as you are when you're drunk, but you know it and you're engaged and you're having fun and you remember it the next day and you made good choices. And,
Mhm.
I didn't have a $75 bar tab or whatever, it's been really life-changing for me.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's another good point, like the money.
Oh yeah. Oh, the money's been huge. I've saved thousands of dollars. Mhm. Yep,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Like, only can allocate that towards something else.
Right. Right. Yeah, I've taken some good vacations now.
Yes.
Yes. Awesome. This has been a really fun conversation. I love your openness and you're willing to share with everyone. Go ahead and remind us of your book and podcast and how we can be in touch with you.
Yeah, the book and podcast is Sex, Drugs, and Soul. And then my website is kristinbirdwell.com, and you'll find all the links and info there. And then I'm also on the gram at Kristin Birdwell. Yeah, I was toying for a while. I'm like, do I change the name of the podcast? Do I not? Because sometimes I'm like, is it censorship or will people think, one thing that it is or not? But it is still Sex, Drugs, and Soul.
So if you
Weird.
find Kristen and it has changed, it's probably still her. I love it. And we'll go ahead and put all those links in the show notes too. Kristen, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your openness and your conversation today.
Oh, thank you. I feel like I could chat with you for a while.
Yeah,
Like, let's
absolutely.
get by. Yeah, thank you for the invite.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, have a great week and go have some fun between the sheets.
Ooh.
Thank you for joining us and exploring sexual health topics here on Between the Sheets. New episodes are available every Wednesday. Please subscribe and rate our podcast so we can reach more listeners. And don't forget to tell your friends, partners, and anyone who will listen about Between the Sheets. Send any comments, questions, or stories to podcastbetweenthesheets@gmail.com. It's all one word, podcastbetweenthesheets@gmail.com. Thanks for listening and go have some fun between the sheets.